All right, Mom. So first we're going to run through the bilateral squat, so you can face this way. And what we're going to do first is take, like we have our feet planted. You don't really have to bend your knees, but we're going to try and activate our glutes first before we do any of these. So try and push your toes out to the side. And when you do that, you should be able to feel your glutes activating. So you should be tensing up your whole leg, trying to put, are you doing it? Trying to push your toes out to the side. Keep them planted so that way they don't go anywhere. You're not actually trying to move them. So push against the resistance and you should be activating your glutes.
Right, yeah.
Do you feel it? Okay. So we want to focus on activating your glutes when you're going into the squat so that way we're not bypassing those muscles. All right. Now we're going to start with our squat. So you got your feet shoulder width apart. You can have your toes pointed forward or slightly out, whichever is more comfortable. And then when we go down into our squat, we're going to keep our chest up. We're trying to keep our back flat. We're going to hinge our hip backward first. And then we're going to bend at the knees. So we're going to make sure we're doing that hip hinge first. As we go down and we're bending our knees, we're going to try and run our knees along the length of our feet. We're not going to try and go over our toes though. So, hip hinge back.
Doggy scale ready.
Alright, hip hinge back. And then knees. And then you're going to go down, 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 down. And then up. So you kept your back flat, which is good. You're trying to keep your chest up. Protect from any lower back injuries that we might come into. So when you go down, we're trying to get to a depth that's going to get us with our knees our thighs about parallel to the ground. So down, 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 that's good. And that's a good depth. And I mean, some people ideally can get lower than that, but I cannot, you cannot, that's where we are on that one. So once we've gotten a good feel for this, we want to get a good feel for kind of having to sit back into it a little bit more. That'll come into play when we do a weighted back squat or a goblet squat where we have to balance our weight. So to do that, we're going to work on a chair squat. So you're doing the exact same thing you were just doing, hip hinging back, then bending at the knees, keeping your feet and toes in line with your knees. And you're just going to come back down, sit on the chair, and come back up. You're not trying to place all your weight on it. You just kind of want to touch your butt and then come back up.
Can you move it behind me? That might be a good place where we start.
Beautiful. Make sure we keep our chest up as much as we can. Nice.
Get all the way down there.
So to add a little bit of resistance to that, we're going to do that same movement, but it's going to be a goblet squat. So we're going to hold the resistance right here in front of our chest. And to do that, we're going to use what we have available.
Last time we did this side,
which is a nice carton of cranberry juice. So you're going to hold it right up here into your chest. And then when you go down, just make sure you're keeping your chest up. Beautiful. Nice. So that's one way we can add resistance. Another way we could add resistance, or at least focus on the form of, is if we had a barbell. This is obviously not as heavy as a barbell, but for our back squat, we're going to take this just to practice the form. We're going to have it on our back. So this is going to force you to keep your chest out and up. So when you go down, you just need to make sure you're keeping that up the whole time down. Make sure we're hinging at the hip before we bend our knees. There we go. That's better. So ideally we would be able to add some resistance to that. We do have some bands that we could run under your feet and attach to the poles, which would add a little bit of resistance. But that's pretty much what we're going to do on our bilateral squat. Now for the deadlift, the biggest difference is what's happening at the knee joint. So at the squat, we're really dependent on bending, hinging our hip back, which is going to stay the same, but then we're very dependent on our knee joints being able to bend and have that full range of motion. It's going to be a little different for the deadlift. So we're going to still feet shoulder width apart, toes pointed forward, And then you're gonna bend at the knee a little bit. Just a little bit. You're gonna have your hip hinged backward. And your knee is gonna stay stable. You're gonna keep your chest up. You're gonna reach down and up. So you're trying to get your back down as far as you can, about parallel, if not a little bit above parallel to the ground. So you're gonna hip your hinge your hip back, bend at the knees, and then we're gonna go down and up. Usually if you try to keep your head up, that'll help you from hunching over. So to begin, and once you're comfortable with that form, to begin adding resistance, step behind this. We're gonna start with an elevated surface. So again, with the cranberry juice, we have that on an elevated surface. You can lay it to the side if it's more comfortable. And this way we're gonna start, hip hinge, bend at the knees a little bit. Now we're gonna reach down. See, right now you're bending your knees. You wanna keep your knees where they were originally. So to reach down went down like that. You wanna focus more on the movement from your hips up. So if your knees are staying the same, your hip going your back down and back up. My legs stayed the same. So hinge at the hip, there you go. That's better. So you want all the movement happening up here, not happening down there. So when we go up, we want to make sure we're also bringing it down before we break our form. So hip hinge, bend at the knee. We're going to go down. We're going to go up. Keep your knees bent. And then go back down. So stabilizing the knee is really isolating those glute muscles, whereas in the squat, when the knee is not stabilized, we're activating more of our quad muscles. So once you start to get more comfortable with that, you can take the elevation away from the resistance. And this time we just have to focus. We're going to get more of a stretch in our hamstring since it's further down. Hinge at the hip, bend our knees a little bit. We're going to go down with the back and come back up. And make sure, so one good way to keep your back as straight as possible and to keep it flexed, extended correctly, is making sure your shoulders don't come in. So if you try to squeeze your scapulas back, that'll make sure your chest stays flattened up like that. So let's do it one more time. Hip hinge, bend at the knee. We're going to squeeze our scaps back as we go down to pick it up. Squeeze our scaps back as we go. So if we were to use a barbell, it would be the same thing. So you can use a kettlebell or a dumbbell in place of that in a gym setting. But if we were to have the barbell and it was lifted up with some weights right there, we'd be about at that height and it would be the same process. And then down. Nice.
Gotcha, Bunker.
Sit down.
Gotcha, Bunker. Gotcha, here. Gotcha, head.